I'd like to call to order this October meeting of the RSU 25 School Board. If you'd all please join with me in the pledge to allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Josh, would you please be kind enough to take the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Foster,
I am here.
Mr. Burgess,
Here.
Mrs. Foster,
Here.
Mr. Frazier,
Here.
Mr. Nealon,
Here.
Mr. Wentworth,
Here.
Mr. Cough,
Here.
and Ms. Atherton now.
Here.
This is the time for public participation. If you're here and you'd like to publicly participate, you can please come up to our wonderful crystal podium. If you are at home and you would like to publicly participate, you can email for public comment at publiccomment@rsu25.org, or you can phone in for public comment at 307-8099. Seeing as how we don't have a line behind the crystal podium, we will move on to adjustments to the agenda.
So I have a bunch of adjustments for you this evening. So the first one, we are looking to move item L4 to directly after the board chair's report, so we can go into executive session. The second one would be to add item L6, where we have a proposed cost center adjustment that we talked about in the finance committee meeting just prior to this. We also have a request for approval of a robotics trip that they just found out about, that they were on a waiting list that they've been accepted into. But it would happen before our next board meeting, and it's out of state and overnight, so we need to take action on that. And then I have a nomination of John Gagan added to L1 for BMS 18 boys basketball coaching position.
All right, it's quite a bit to take in. I would seek approval of the minutes.
I move that we accept the minutes from September 17, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes? I'll abstain. All right, we'll move back all except for one. And that's just an abstention. Next, we've got communications and correspondence.
I have no correspondence or communications.
All right. Superintendent's report. I understand that you emailed what.
No, I did not, and I apologize for not doing one this past.
It was the other.
Oh, the other.
The other.
This is like your
administrative.
third meeting.
I did not get one out last week, so I apologize for that. What was going to be in my report, I actually, so you're gonna see this, we handed out to all of you. Just to talk about the event that happened at Bucksville High School between, on the 24th, on September 24th, between our last meeting and this meeting, where we had to put, ended up having to dismiss the school in the middle of the day due to a school threat. I know I communicated to you via email, on that day 2 or 3 different times, just kind of about what led up to the event. But Mr. Ward put together, I think, a really nice timeline, just to kind of give you a sense here of how fast everything really did happen. And again, I think you never want to be put in a situation where you have to go through something like this. It creates a lot of angst among students, staff, parents, communities. Unfortunately, it's coming all too commonplace, these types of hoaxes that just cause disruption. But there's also too many instances where they're not hoaxes and they end up being real catastrophes in places. So I think what it did allow us to do, it allowed us to practice our safety protocols in a situation that was real, that felt real, but ended up having no imminent threat or casualties or anything along those lines. But as you can see, from the time that the threat came in, just after 9:30, right around 9:40, that we had a student that received a social media threat about the school, and it said that the threat was actually inside of the school. From the time that we received it, where administration assessed the threat, contacted public safety, contacted myself, and actually determined that this is something that was, at that time, we couldn't say it was not credible, something that we had to take seriously. We were able to get 10 school buses. I mean, the buses are home at that point, the bus drivers are home at that point. Because the threat was specific to this building, it did not make sense for us to do an evacuation to another location, because if the person was inside the building, we would just be bringing that threat with us. So really, when confirming public safety, the best case scenario was for us to dismiss the building as safely as possible. But I won't go through the whole timeline here, but I think it's just important to know from time of us being notified and assessing it, to have every student out of here by 11/28 safely, it was pretty good work, I think, from all the people that were involved, in this. I mean, because that's again, we had to find bus drivers, we had to get buses here, we had to change routes. So we only had 10 buses, there's more than 10 buses that take these students home. And I know there's been the questions and asking, how can we dismiss the other schools, how can we just send them home? That really would not have been logistically possible for us to get all those students home at that point in time. Especially based on the resources we had there. So we really had to just deal with the school where the threat was. It was not too long after that 11:30. And we have to thank Bucksport Public Safety, just did a phenomenal job working with us, our partnerships. We talk about it all the time that we have with our public safety department. I truly believe that because they are so present here all the time, just hanging out, that when we need them to take on a serious matter like this, it doesn't create a sense of panic within the school, and students responded phenomenally. I mean, again, there was angst, people were on edge. There were not people screaming in the hallways, there were not people running around. Parents, when they were coming up to pick up their kids, after we sent out the communication saying that they could be dismissed, were orderly. They came out, they were patient, they allowed us to get our students. We had custodians, we had guidance counselors, we had people that weren't even on duty for public safety that called in, said we'll be there. We were able to dismiss this in a very orderly, calm fashion. Again, there's areas that we know that we can clean up, we can be a little bit better at. Communication is never perfect, and you know, that's something that we're gonna continue to look at, what we can be better at. We have canned responses to situations. What we quickly learned is that those canned responses are very good for very specific situations. If those situations are altered or at all, those canned responses don't do a lot of good. We end up rewriting just about everything that we were sending out. It does give us an initial framework, but, so again, I think it's never something we want to have to go through, even when we know it is a hoax. Mr. Moore was his expertise, both from a law enforcement side, but from a digital, cybercrime security side was fantastic. We were quickly within, I would say by 1:15, we knew that the phone that had made the threat through a social media account was not in the state. Now, we had already dismissed kids, it was too late to do, you know, anything at that point, but we knew, so we were, again, we were very thorough, we wanted to make sure, but we knew we were gonna be fine to return to school by 4:30 that evening when we sent out the last communication. So public safety is still working because it is across state borders. They had to bring in Homeland Security to do that. They were actually able to identify people in this. And they're working through that process, and they'll fill us in, and it's not an immediate process. But so again, I'm happy to answer any questions on that. Again, I think we learned a lot. We've debriefed with public safety. We've debriefed a couple times as an administrative team. Again, there's certainly things that we could do better, but I think in general, our staff and students did a phenomenal job. They really, really did.
So how did the transportation call go, Josh? I mean, what are the details? Did you call Sue? Did you call? So those people who came, did you call 10 buses or did you call as many as you could?
Anybody we could get ahead of the
Did like one come, then two more, then how did it go?
They were on there. We started dismissing at 10:54. They were there by, I would say, 10:40.
Oh,
They were
wow.
and
That's impressive.
yeah, and so within an hour, they were able to get us 10 bus drivers, 10 buses.
And how were they broken up? Was it?
And not only that, but Sue redesigned our routes. So like we were combining places. So it's not just the Prospect buses going out. So Prospect, so anybody who rode bus A, B, and C are now on this bus.
Oh,
Right,
Yeah.
because you're using 10 buses to do 20 routes.
Right. So then we were quickly.
So you got as many buses as you could get,
Correct.
and 10 showed up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then more people they were ready at that point. We already had,
Oh, okay.
you know,
How
and
many
it's-
bus routes are there?
what's that?
How many bus routes are there?
We have 22.
Yeah.
I believe is the number. So, and again, we have some that do like an in-town route and then we will come back. I mean, it's, You know, but we have like one bus that was on its way to HGTC, right, and come back. So this,
Oh, okay.
you have lots of things at play there. We had students at HGTC that were coming back. Again, there's just a lot of variables that go with this. Sue did a phenomenal job at getting that. That, again, if it's just going up to an evacuation site, to a different spot, you only need 4 or 5 buses, because you can just put everybody on a bus. Doesn't matter where they're going, you relocate them. We're in a situation where they have to go home. Again, because they're high school students, we can take them home. We'd send out the notification, they're okay to be by themselves. If you're talking about an elementary school, you're not dropping off kindergartners, you're not dropping off first graders without knowing that there's somebody there. So that also added to the logistical, you can't just, as much as some people would like to say you should just send everybody home, it's just not that feasible to do, so. So Dan, did I answer your question?
Yeah, I just want to know if you've got as many buses as you
We
can.
did, yeah. We even had some people that have bus licenses that work for the town that don't drive anymore on standby, ready to go if we needed them to. And Director Gagan had reached out to them, and
Okay.
So Josh, I don't want to get into the plan at all. All I would ask is, will there be some point where, whatever team develops this safety and security plan, be able to get together and assess,
Degree.
you know, if there was any changes that need to be updated to the plan based on what has happened?
so the first step to that is, we debriefed as administrative team, again, just to talk from our perspective of what went well, what didn't. All the principals worked with their staff, talk about what went well inside the classrooms, what didn't go well. Again, the other buildings were on, what we call a soft or lockdown, just pretty much what we're doing, just didn't have everybody outside, right? There's still free movement within the buildings. We just didn't send people outside at that point.
A little feedback about what was confusing though, that Reach My Teach sent one out for Samuel and Walter, though it did say high school. It did lead me to call the middle school, which might have prompted other people to, just because, and maybe there's no way around it, but it was clear it said the high school, but I was like, but this is Sam, so I mean, did they just mean to write middle school? You know what? It was
Yeah.
a little confusing.
Yeah, so the,
But and at the middle school, they were fantastic, they were very calm, they said, no,
Yeah.
we're in a lockdown and we're fine, and Sam's okay, so.
yeah, I mean, we can hit parents by building. And again, trying to craft those messages quickly.
Yeah.
In that situation.
Yeah, no, I mean, I got it and it worked, but I just,
And we
just
did
for
find that
feedback.
people would have students in different buildings, you know, there was confusion on some of that part. And the second one, again, we were triaging the high school, like we were trying to take care of that. So the second message for the other schools really kind of took, it didn't get out to, I think, 45 minutes after the one to the high school. Which I know some people are frustrated by that, and I get, but again, our focus was to get everybody out of the high school, right, and get buses here and the coordination that went along with that. So, but we've also met with public safety, Tom, to finish that thought, and their feedback, what they can do better, what we can do better, and then we will meet with our safety committee as well. And so I think we'll cover it from a lot of different perspectives. I will say, you know, we've gotten some feedback from the public, from parents, 98% of it has been really positive. I mean, obviously, they're not happy that a situation like this has to happen, knowing that they know it's not our fault, but in terms of like the response to it, it's been pretty positive, which has been good. Again, there's a few situations, you can never get ahead of social media and the cell phone, no matter how hard you try, right? You try to beat it, but when you put 360 kids in a building that all have cellular devices, you try to get that message out there, but you want to have accurate message, you know, what you're getting ready to do. So no matter what you try to do, you can't always beat the message that is getting sent out, so. Any other questions or?
Yeah, you said you had what, like you said, 2% negative feedback. Was there anything that you thought was good negative feedback that you could work on?
Well, I think a lot of it is, again, just some about the clear messaging of just having students in a couple different buildings or.
And I wouldn't even say that, I mean, I don't take that as total negative, it just might have clogged up your middle
Yeah.
school homes.
Absolutely. I will say, if you want to literally hear a phone ring for an hour straight without it stopping. Our high school office, so that's all it did. I mean, and central office was ringing a lot. I mean, all the buildings, the phones were crazy that day for a good reason. But most of it's been around that, and it's just trying to, again, there's lots of studies that talk about communication during crisis, right? And it's an imperfect science, but I think all of that feedback is good. I mean, anything that we can do to try and be better, you know, some people think that they wish their younger kids had cell phones and they could let them know what was going on, and that doesn't necessarily help that's the exact opposite of what we're hearing
Yeah,
from
that
public
doesn't
safety,
keep
right?
people
Yeah.
calm.
It's public safety wants that stuff, the misinformation that can be
Yeah.
sent out there to be at a minimum, so.
Gotcha.
But nothing real glaring, Danny, I think to answer your question. I think all little stuff that has been good, and a lot of great stuff from staff too, in terms of things that could make it better.
Do we have any outbound messaging when people call the high school?
Say that again.
Do we have any
Outbound in
outbound
terms of-
messaging when people call the high school? So you call the high school, it says, oh, your call will be answered in just a moment, yada, 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 nothing like.
So we have an answering machine, because, but if they're on the phone actively talking to other people, I mean, they would end up in an answer, but there's not gonna be a menu of options for them to go through.
Right. I didn't know if we might have something like that in place that could be quickly updated in a crisis scenario so that when the phones are going off, you know, people can get some sort of reassuring message. We're actively dealing with the situation. Parents will be
Yeah.
updated as soon as there's more information to share.
I would say this probably would be just based on that. I mean, we had a hard time getting Aaron for the phone to stop for a second, so Aaron could get on the intercom to talk to,
Right.
because we talked to that same thing, and we have some workarounds for that. But we have talked about just having more phones available, different lines where they're ringing through to. Nobody wants to talk to a machine or hear a message at that point. They want.
No, they want a human connection. They want to talk to somebody they
As
trust.
someone who spent many hours on IRS news ad, I don't think that helps in a crisis
No.
situation to be put in a waiting line on a phone.
Right.
I wasn't necessarily
But-
putting a waiting.
Yeah, I think he was
putting a
just talking
waiting
about
line.
having their VA message so
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
people hear something like,
Yeah.
So they're not just, you know,
your kids
ringing
are
on
safe.
a.
we're working on the
ringing a
situation.
deadline or, you know, not being able to get through because all the lines are busy.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
But I mean, then you have to like have somebody updated and
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
I guess
It's a lot-
there's
Right.
lots.
It's just
Right.
another step. It's
Right,
not-
there's lots of stuff there that,
Yeah.
again, we realized that it would have
The
been
more
really
steps
good
you add, the more things that
if
are.
X had happened or Y would have happened, but, you know, there's only so many things can happen all at once, and, so we've looked at how we can prioritize things, how we can be more efficient, but everybody across the district, it didn't matter what building they were in. I mean, again, I know the focus was on the high school, but, it really was a district-wide effort to make this all go as well as it could have.
perfect.
Well, on the board's chair report, we have much lighter. Just wanted to, since I skipped out on the last meeting, I just wanted to welcome everyone to school and hope that everyone has been having a good fall. And we are expected to have an executive session next, but since we don't have a show, would we be able to adjust the agenda, adjust the
Readjust.
adjustments to the agenda to,
Let me just have.
Push that
check
back.
real quick. Make sure that someone didn't come in. Oh, yeah, they are here, so.
oh, they are here, okay, good. Well, then, once they come in, we can move to, executive session. So those of you who are not involved in the executive session,
We need a motion to go into executive session. right now.
I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of moving into executive session, that is unanimous. Thank you, everyone. We'll
Jim?
Thank you all. I'd like to bring us back in. And we were going to need to take a motion.
Okay. I move that the board expel the student under consideration and that the superintendent provide the board and the parents with the board's written findings.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Shoulder?
Next, we have committee reports. Curriculum.
My computer has gone to sleep. We had a pretty, we had a pretty short meeting, actually. The bulk of our meeting was on the district data presentation preview that Christina showed us and she'll be doing tonight, I believe, so I will not steal her thunder on that. And then we talked about the Anxious Generation book club that's starting up, and there, if anybody is interested in reading this, there are multiple ways you can get this book that are either no cost or low cost to you, and they're meeting on 3 separate occasions.
Bookstacks has the book, correct?
Yep,
Yeah,
Bookstacks has it. RSU 25 has a certain amount of them that they're lending out. And then we will have our next meeting November 14th.
Finance committee met right before this meeting. Many of you were here. So I will make it brief, but we went over the cost center report. The only cost centers that are mostly used are debt service, and that's because we have our payments of those debts. The rest of the costs are all right in line. We also looked at food service, and when we budget in the payment for the last month's school lunch subsidy, we're in the black there. And we also looked at the senior food, and they are in the black.
$71.
It's under $100, but still.
Why is that anyway?
Just an increase in, the number of meals that were served.
Oh, good.
No,
That, and there was a change in salary arrangement,
we had a small shift, but
very small shift.
Yeah.
But we're talking small numbers.
Also, they had a good sized food order last month, and a slightly smaller of a food order this month, because they're going through some staples that were on that previous order.
And that is finance, policy meeting.
I was not in attendance, so.
We didn't meet.
We didn't meet, that's right.
Yeah.
It was the one before that, I wasn't there.
Facilities.
Facilities, we met last Thursday. Anthony gave her an update of, well, the first thing he talked about, he showed a picture of someone put a drone up, I think it was Matt McKinnon put a really nice picture of kind of like the campus and the football field and everything, the sunset over Bucksport, it was really nice. He was showing pictures of that, and he had an aerial view of the actual football field, how it looks straight over it. It was kind of neat. But then he updated us on the new maintenance work ticket program, I guess you'd call it IQ program, and it's now being used at the middle school.
incident IQ.
Incident IQ. And he went over that for a little bit. The Miles Lane booster pumps, booster pump is scheduled to be done in November. The Miles Lane fuel tank project is proceeding with permits from the fire department. The pad should be in by the end of November. He updated us on some of the rough areas around the middle school. I've got pictures of that if anybody wants to see, from the siding project. They should be fixed in a couple of days, just small things like corners and, defects that would cause, and they're gonna fix those if they haven't been fixed already. Then we had the group, the Bacchus group showed up. That was kind of surprising. I didn't know they were gonna be there, which was great. The rest of the meeting was pretty much dominated by their wants and needs of the Klein Auditorium. We pretty, what?
Go ahead.
But it was in a very positive way in terms of trying to promote more events.
No, I know, yeah.
So,
But anyway, so then we talked about, some of the lighting issues, that why the improvements of the lighting in all the schools weren't included in the actual lighting of the Klein Auditorium. The back curtain, in the stage, the installation of that, some of the safety issues they had with the with the curtain pulleys, I guess, they weren't covered.
The rigging, yeah.
And it's pretty good back and forth there. Then at the end of it, we started talking about how we can generate funds, town committee and our RSU 25 group get together and maybe work together to raise funds by using the auditorium for shows and et cetera. And then we ran out of time, but he actually started to talk about the 5-year plan. And we'll probably continue that later. That was all.
I know. Dr. Redden and I sit on the Economic Development Committee for the town of Bucksport, and I know that's been a big push from the town because of the investments that they have made in the Performing Arts Center. And Bacchus and now Jess Ormsby, who is kind of spearheading that. They really want to make this a more widely used community space. And again, so they're having a comedy show in there in November that's being supported and again, with the money to go right into Bacchus. And so again, I think a cross effort of us looking at what our contributions will be from the RSU 25 sides of things in terms of the upkeep and of that space, as well as the money that they are using based off of fundraising activities. We're really trying to be intentional, especially early on, and how we can leverage some of our resources, whether it be us just helping out with the maintenance, cleaning of the facility for these first few ones. But again, trying to get this to be more widely used for these community type events. So I think it's a great discussion and great interest in it. And again, the town did commit a portion of money as well for some of these upgrades, such as the rigging and stuff
Right.
there. So,
Has that been done?
It was really good.
so we got all these quotes during COVID. And then we couldn't get anybody to get in here and do anything. And then, so now of course, all those performing arts stuff just weren't happening like they were. So now we're trying to get back on track there. There's not a lot of companies that do this work. There's actually really just one in our area. So we're kind of at their mercy in terms of when we can get them in here to even just get us quotes. We were trying to get quotes for the longest time. That's why actually Anthony now just brought it was on the agenda because we were having a hard time getting an updated quote and stuff.
It was a really good meeting.
20, the last time we heard a quote back in 2020.
And
Pre-COVID.
Incident IQ, that's just a system for reporting things that need repair or
Maintenance.
It makes it more
And
efficient.
reservation. of
Like a work
spaces.
order.
I know
Yeah.
it sounds
Goes
like.
right
it's
to Anthony.
Yeah, but you can actually like reserve all spaces within the district through this.
Oh,
program.
that's
So like,
cool.
if you need to reserve the Bucksport High School Library, but it's one centralized
Oh, that's
space.
Makes it really good.
Right.
for Anthony.
So all employees can use that?
But
For now.
within
Okay.
reason, you don't want too many
Well,
cooks in the kitchen there
yeah,
because. then-
anyone who might need to reserve something or report something.
Yes,
I mean, I was talking to Anthony about maybe having the custodians bring more feedback of what they see, because they
Yeah.
probably say it and don't tell him.
but it also does help tickets, like if there's maintenance requests to fix things, it's done through the same system. So
Right.
this actually does lots of different things.
He said the middle school's using that now.
Yeah.
Is that it, just the middle school?
Well, Jim Morrow, could answer this better. It's being used in other pockets. They have tested out with the middle school, primarily in terms of reserving the auditorium, because that's been the big one. Jim, do you want to speak?
Yeah, so Instant IQ is a K-12 based company. They started with asset management and ticketing for technology. And as they rolled into that, as we see all the time, there's the overlay, especially with facilities, even HR module they have in there. So we've included facilities now. So the maintenance staff, if there's a maintenance issue, when the ticket's submitted, it notifies the building staff and then Anthony's notified. So we rolled it into events because we end up with this one landing port. So if you need a support, if you're looking for resources, our staff can go to one spot. The big tool of the events is that our outside agencies, such as the Scouts, Maine Beekeepers Association, Down East Y, will use the same portal. So they'll request the information. It then triggers who needs to know. Right now, if we get a paper submission, Sue needs to make sure she contacts each division that's on there with food service technology. This all digitally does that with a workflow.
Does that all come down to Anthony making a priority?
Well, Anthony's part of it. So Anthony's notified if it's outside of operational hours or they need services from him. But like when the Y can now go on and schedule their basketball throughout, and unless there's some reason to alert Anthony, that doesn't need to come through him.
But we now know when we schedule something and there's, you know, we need to line a field, or we need to provide custodial support, where tech needs to be there to make sure there's a
Right.
projector. We don't have to rely on a person to remember everybody that needs to be notified and figure out what they need for support. It's gonna be done electronically, and we can't double book things, which will be.
Correct.
How do we authorize
So like, let's say the scouts wanna do something, does the system just put it in there because there's nothing there,
There's
or does
three
it go to
layers.
does it go to?
Yeah, there's 3 layers. What you're talking about is external persons.
Yeah.
So they have to have their insurance on file with us and a profile, and then they decide who's attached to that and they need to request on their behalf. When they fill out an event form, everything that's on our facility use is digitally there. Then when it's submitted, depending on what they need for services, it goes through Anthony, food service, then myself. Assuming the 3 of us or whichever combination of us can support that date, it then goes on to the superintendent's office for approval.
Oh,
If none of us can do that approval, it notifies that person that's not gonna work for us. At which time we take it out of the system and communicate with them because we wanna work with as much as we can.
so there are human beings involved.
There are, there absolutely are.
Yeah, you can't just book the football field for Saturday and.
Well, that's what I was
Yeah,
wondering,
right.
because
Yeah, anything
you
external,
never know.
anything external needs to be approved, anything within a building has to be approved by the building administrator or the designee. Anything on a sports field needs to be approved by the school that's affiliated with the fields, which is defaults to the assistant principal, then kicks back to the building administrator.
I think that kind of answered my question, but, as far as prioritization,
Yeah,
and that's where that would come into play on a field. You know, I could just, you could foresee the Y saying we want to do these weekends at this time, but at the same time, we may have a high school basketball tournament going on or something school related.
Yeah.
So at some
so in that
point,
case,
it's
the
gonna
Y
be-
would request, say, the football field, we use it a couple times.
Yeah,
So that would first require building administrator, or actually Daniel Magus to approve it,
right.
and then Aaron's is backup.
So there is a
Or it goes on to service.
prioritization.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
To it.
Yeah, all the questions we had, and Hunter Gross, there is an IQ expert, and he worked with them writing these rules. They are not pretty, they are long. I'm glad he was in robotics and coding, because it's got logic workflows to it. And it's an IQ is actually using that model now to show to other schools.
Thank you.
See, we didn't have your glasses on, so I wanted to help you.
So I was going.
Well, because we didn't meet in September, we covered quite a bit last week. I'll start with enrollment. Last spring, I reported that we've had about 300 students enrolled in HCTC. We have 261. That's quite a drop from what we had, and it has bothered Bill Tracy as to why did we lose almost 40 people. He's been checking in with a lot, and a lot of it are things not within our control. You know, some students just decided not to go. Some students said, hey, I need my credit, or I'm not gonna graduate. So there were some reasons. He was afraid it was something that we did at HCTC wrong. But on a good note, in September of 23, we had 231. So it was 30 higher than last year, even though we thought we were gonna be much higher. 49 students from Bucksville High School here are attending HCTC. So we didn't turn anybody away. It's actually, we're the second highest sender behind Ellsworth. We have 26 people in our welding program, 14 in the morning and 12 in the afternoon. And believe it or not, there are 5 homeschoolers. I don't know where they are from Hancock County, but there are 5 homeschoolers that are going to HCTC. The carpentry program is brand new. It's back, and it's at Sumner High School, and we have 20 people involved. I think we have 2 from. We have 2 from Sumner is Sullivan.
Oh, okay. Outside Hancock.
Yeah, so we have 20, and they thought the first year that was really good. They are working on the Sumner dugouts right now on their new athletic fields,
Nice.
and they are looking for projects. So if anybody has a neat little project, send the information my way and I'll make sure that they get it. Not right now.
Thanks.
But, the new satellite program for firefighting and EMT has been approved for 25-26. It's gonna be at the Ellsworth Fire Department. It's firefighting 1 year EMT, and then they also are adding a medical assisting program, which is gonna be a 1 year program where you can get a certificate. So that would be, I think that's gonna fly, I really do. MDI is exploring, they're looking at having a courses provided at their school where they introduce welding, carpentry, woodworking, and media. Now, I don't know how this is going, what this is gonna look like, it's year long, 3 different courses or whatever, but it's gonna help, it's gonna go hand in hand, in line with the ACTC, so maybe more kids will wanna go into, welding or carpentry or media. And that's not gonna happen until the 26-27 school year, so we'll just have to see how that's gonna work out. Last spring, we voted unanimously to hire an assistant director when Bill's out of the building. And that has been a very helpful and good choice. That person has taken care of a lot of problems that have arisen when Bill's not there. So we said, boy, that's been helpful.
If I remember correctly, that is, another member of the staff.
It's a staff member that's getting a
Okay.
stipend
Yeah.
to do that when they're out of the building. Other than that, it's just coming events and things like that. I think the leadership breakfast is December 6th. You didn't know that already, but I didn't. Okay, so from 9 to 11. That's late for breakfast. I'm ready for lunch. That's all I have. If there are any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Scott, when HCPC develops their budget to determine what their tuition rate is, do they, if they make a real error in what they think the number of students are, how is that shortfall made up? Do they increase the tuition rate to everybody midstream, or?
I know that.
You do? Good. I hope you do.
So they get their numbers, and then they would do what we would do, say, assume you're gonna lose 10 to 15%. Cause this is a pretty typical fallback that you saw here. So if they 300, they knew they were not gonna be at 300, that they're gonna, so kind of like we do with our tuition, students.
But let's say they didn't, let's say they messed up. Let's say they really thought they were gonna have 300, and so they budgeted for 300, and then they only got 250.
There is a change in the tuition.
Then they would change the tuition rate, what would happen.
Yeah.
And so far as you're seeing, that isn't what's gonna happen.
I do not believe that's what's gonna happen.
Because
Because
just
it's still
because of the
30,
finance
well.
committee, we just moved some money
I know,
around.
we just moved it. Yeah, we
Just
got that
asking the
discussion.
question up front.
And that was 2 years ago, so you don't wanna do this 2 years from now. I
That's right.
hear you. Yeah, I really don't
Okay.
have a great answer for that.
No, again, they make the best educated guess they can on the numbers you have. And then, unfortunately, if you don't get that tuition money coming in, then
And
Somebody
HCTC
got-
is part of the Ellsworth School Department.
Well,
Different
that's
than
what I-
Bangor
Yeah.
and some of those
But
others.
it
We don't
isn't a
stand
case of
alone.
that Ellsworth picks up for the mistake.
I'm hoping that if this happens again, they'll let the advisory council know in time that we, but that's a very good question.
Now, these new course offerings at MDI, are those gonna be competitive with HCTC?
That'll only be an introductory, it'll be exploratory, yeah. It'll be, they won't be teaching welding, but they'll be showing a class that'll introduce of this is what you can do with welding, this is how funny you can make welding, this is what you can expect.
it's more designed for freshmen and sophomores.
Right.
Prior to them applying, so they have an idea.
Again, that's not even
That's
have
good.
till
We need to
26, 27. So I think,
Basically, it's trades 101.
yeah, it's like Ellsworth, I think, was planning on doing it and it fell through, they didn't do it.
It's tough because you try to front load your freshman and sophomores credits so much so that they can go to HCTC their junior and senior year, so they're trying to get a lot of their core stuff out of the way, and even though we've done a lot of work in terms of having dual credits, we're doing more work so you can earn credits while at HCTC in your core subject areas. You have to have a pretty good footing before you can say, I'm gonna be gone for half a day. And so when you get back, you only have another half day to get all the other core stuff in. So if you haven't done a health, a gym, applied arts, before your junior or senior year, you're gonna have a really hard time going to HCTC. So when you front load all that to your freshman, sophomore year, it's harder to get that intro to HCTC, basically. So they're playing around with, we are hoping that through that, you will see a decrease in attrition in some of these numbers, right? So if they have a better idea of what the program is before they go there and they get in,
Is it a trial?
what's that?
It's a trial.
No, they just get exposed to all of them.
Okay.
So like you would get, and they choose, I say all of them, they will choose like
They
3 or 4
chose
groups,
three, yeah.
they're grouped together. And then you get, you get exposure to those 3, and then you can choose, well, that's the program I want to go apply for because I had. a
Too late to get excited when you're a senior.
Right.
So is this just like a day program or is it?
No,
like-
it'd be a course.
It's a
It'd be-
course,
They would
right.
take a
Wow.
course and it's only for MDI students.
Alright.
It's just an
But
elective
it's just-
credit.
We could do the same thing here if we wanted
Yeah.
to. We could fit it into our schedule and something.
So
I
it's just
didn't-
it's just for MDI students.
Right.
It isn't really affecting anybody
No,
here.
hopefully, because,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
attached to HDC.
but they're hoping, yeah, that it will align with HCTC,
Okay.
so they may want to go there. They're
That's
doing
good.
this in, yeah. Which would help the enrollment. I didn't even get into the academic crosswalk because I thought that
That was
was
a whole meeting in
way,
itself.
that was way too confusing. So I didn't even go into that. You touched upon it a little bit, getting credits and stuff.
Any other questions about HCTC? All right, we have no old business. Under new business, we have some resignations and retirements.
Yes, so, for, resignations, retirements, we have Marianne Kester for computer science, IT media specialist. Marianne just took on this position, but unfortunately has some, family stuff that is requiring her to, she'll actually be relocating, so she won't be able to continue in this position. And then we also have Cassidy Noonan, as a special ed tech. Cassidy did a nice job for us, but again, is moving on to a different career change. So, again, nothing bad in any of these cases. It's just change in life, circumstances. And then, for our coaches co-curricular, we have, Mike Gartzlaw, for indoor outdoor track. Jess Cotter for a girls B team basketball coach. I think she won 2 or 3 championships in a row. She's going out on top. And, I put John Geegan there under resignations and that should be down under nominations. So we're just.
In mine, it's under nomination.
It's correct on mine.
Okay,
Well,
These all vacant positions now.
yes, we do have, we did put out postings for those and I know that there was for the indoor outdoor track. You'll have nominations for the next.
So I would look for a motion to accept, all of the resignations and retirements with regret.
So moved, you just did.
Yeah, you just.
So, we have a so moved and a second. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Now we've got nominations.
Yes, so for teachers and we have, Caitlin Cloutier, who is with here with us, a former BHS graduate. Not all that long ago, 2020, right? Yep. So she is going to be joining us as a special education teacher.
Nice.
And we're very happy to hear, so welcome, Caitlin.
Thank you,
Welcome back.
thank you.
And on our coaches and co-curricular, we have Colin Meshi. And I know we're doing this now, even though the soccer season for the middle school is just about over, but the numbers were really big and we had it. And I had sent out an email saying that we had to do this, but officially bringing it before the board now for boys B team soccer and John Geegan for BMS boys A-team basketball coach.
Well, I move that we accept these nominations as a block.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Well, now I get to email Jack and say that we hired you.
Thank you for coming. Congratulations.
Next, we've got second reading policies.
Yes, you have 3 policies coming back for second reading. There were no changes in any of them from the last time. I know we didn't have a policy committee meeting, but these ones I think are pretty straightforward and there was no concern on them when we did do the first reading.
Well, I move that we accept the second reading of the 3 policies as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
It's unanimous, thank you. Next we've got adjustment L7.
Yes, so, we found out, today, Ms. Ward was, our robotics team, it's hard to believe that we're already jumping into robotics trips, but they have traditionally in the past been part of, an off-season, trip to New Hampshire. This is one that they've done before. They were on a waiting list, because this event has become pretty popular. And we found out that that there was space for them today. It is on November 2nd and 3rd, so they'll be leaving here at 4:30 in the morning, using the two vans, going down. For their competing, and so I believe the competitions are all day on Saturday, and then they actually have, an all-girls competition the second day.
Nice.
And so they will be there for both days, for this. It is out of state and overnight, so it does need board approval. There's an excursion form, but, the reason is so last minute, because they literally just found out that they come off the waiting list.
Nice.
So,
I have a question. As far as chaperones, I can't remember what our policy reads, but, will we have any female chaperones attending?
so there was none on this excursion, but we have always had one in the past, and sometimes it's been a parent volunteer, so.
I know, I remember when we crafted those policies, that was something that we wanted to do, is if they had, we had female participants, we wanted to try to have female.
Yeah. Again, because this came in so, like, they didn't have anybody, I think that, and I don't think they just felt comfortable putting down, yes, we have one, even though they haven't talked to somebody.
Do you think they will try to maybe?
I know
find-
they will, so in the past, one of the coaches' wives has gone, Colleen has gone, and she was advising for them. There's always a mother that will go down with parents, and then we just, so that will happen. It just,
Yep,
at
thank
the
you.
time of filling out this,
Yep.
that was
my concern.
Mr. Ward will make sure it happens.
Where's the $2,000 come from? The cost of this?
So they have, robotics has a very healthy, fundraising, track record. So because they've been so successful, people just randomly send them money. It's really a great problem that.
She was successful.
Must be nice.
But no, so we budget, I think it's just over $12,000 for supplies and some travel expenses. And then we have another supply line that we budget some money for. So we put a decent amount of local money in there, but they fundraise about 3 times as much local money as we put in and get sponsorships. So really, a majority of their stuff, the $2,000 is the cheapest one that they'll do all year.
Right.
And so
Suppose this.
this will, my guess is, and Mr. Ward would have to correct me, I'm guessing that they're paying for this one out of their checking account, out of their own club account. And they really know going into it. Before, when we first started, it would be one event or 2 events that we would do. And now they go to all of the events that you see here locally. They do they've done the one in Rhode Island in the past. They always do the one in New Hampshire regionals, and then they of course have the world championships. Because of their business sponsorships, I mean, that's the only reason we have the program that's as successful as we would spend a lot of money locally, and we contribute a lot.
So there's a lot of side support.
But there's a lot, yeah. So again, we probably have, I'd have to go back and look at the spreadsheet I did, but I would say locally, we probably have about $22,000 invested between supplies, registration fees, coaching stipends. I mean, there's just a lot of that stuff that goes into it, travel. But I would say you at least triple that, and that's what we get from outside community support for the program. So that's money that we invest that we get a lot out of in terms of the return on our investment from people that are looking to support the program.
So if this hadn't come up before the board meeting, how would that have gotten approved?
What's that?
So if this hadn't come up before the board meeting, how would this have gotten approved?
Either one, I wouldn't have, or I would have been reaching out to all of you, and we've
Fair.
either done we've done that in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, because sometimes you just don't know,
Right,
and you don't want to cheat the kids out of
right.
an opportunity that
Yeah, I think the first Worlds was like that.
it was,
Yeah.
and again, this,
All of a sudden, oh, we can go. And we need to know right now.
the nice thing that we have done, now is that for all of the regular scheduled ones, we know we can get into.
Sure.
We do a blanket, like you'll get all of those in January. If we don't qualify for regionals, or if we don't qualify for worlds, you've already approved the trip, we just don't go. But, again, we've been pretty fortunate that that hasn't really been the case. We've always qualified. This one is just one that it's nice if we get in, and if we don't, it's not the end of the world
Right.
either. So,
And I think the only comment that I have is I agree with, David and Scott about that we really should try to find a female chaperone.
yeah,
I don't feel
From,
one of the people.
you know, from just my experience, having been one of the chaperones on these trips before, when we had a single female, she had a chaperone. And, now there's more females than there are males, which is a good thing.
Really?
There's 10 females.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, sometimes ladies have some issues that are uncomfortable for men to deal with
Like what?
in a hotel room. And it would be convenient if somebody who was not men could assist them if such a need were to arise.
the nice thing is we never have a shortage of volunteers when it comes to robotics. So that one's not going to be an issue at all. We will ensure that happens.
I'll work on it.
Yeah. And Mr. Boyne will be able to tell you, I know these 4 mothers are gonna be there anyways, and quite often, as a lot of you know, because you've been on them, they stay in the same hotel as them.
Yes, and that oftentimes does happen.
Yeah.
For your comfort, would you like something like that to be included in the motion about this?
No, I'd like it to be known as an understanding when we go into more serious competitions down the road. We can resolve.
Necessity.
That is always something that's taken in, like I said, this was a rushed excursion form from Mr. Boyne, which is done very well, even his rush ones are good, so.
So I would make a motion that we approve the request of the BHS robotics team to travel to Alton, New Hampshire for a competition, November 2nd and 3rd.
Second.
We have a motion in a second. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have adjustment L6. Proposal to move $23,561 from facilities maintenance cost center. The fiscal year 23 budget cover overages in the following 3 cost centers. Career and technical education, $18,815. System administration, $3,975. And school administration, $771.
Just the background on this quickly, this, again, you actually voted in about this past June, when the June of 2023, because by law, we can move, if we have a shortage in a cost center, we can move up to 5% from another cost center that does not have a shortage, that has an extra balance. We can move that over to compensate for that shortage. In years past, we've had an agenda, and again, in June of 23, you approved for us to move 5% to, compensate for any shortages in any cost center. Katie found out today that they want actual numbers from specific cost centers that are being moved in an approved agenda, even though you gave us permission to do that before. They want to see an agenda.
The state,
No,
The auditor.
your auditor.
So, if the auditor wants it, we want the audit to be complete.
Sure.
So, like I said, in the finance committee, I think it's just, they don't trust me because it's my first year, so it's
We don't.
most likely that. But, so that, hence, again, you've actually already approved this within the fiscal year that, it was done. But this is just really to make the auditor happy that we have the right numbers and those costs.
These are the numbers.
So they've already really been moved and we're just.
We will officially move it after this meeting, and we chose, again, this isn't taking money from a reserve fund, this is extra money that we had in one cost center that we're balancing out another cost center. This is already money that has been, local money that's been approved.
And it's well within the 5% threshold.
It's not,
that
it's not
we're
even,
limited to.
not even close.
I'll make a motion that we move the cost centers as proposed.
Second?
We have a motion and second, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you again. Now we have Director of Curriculum, Annual State and Local Data Presentation.
Okay, give me just a second to get the boxes that make sense.
No, we,
Talk amongst yourselves. I'm getting on point.
This year, which was 60, we just thought.
She's kind of stumped, yeah.
She was.
First question.
All right, I think I'm ready. So I'll just kind of go through this as quickly but as informative as I can for you, 'cause I know it's getting late. As you guys know, every year right around this time, I give you a kind of an update on our data from last year. So from the 23-24, by the time we get the state results, this is about the right time. I'll give you our district new year results for 23-24, and then our SS state district results from the state portion of the test. So I've shared this with you before, but we have kind of dual purpose for the NWEA assessment. We've been doing it in this district for many, many years. We've used it kind of as our universal screener tool. So before the state kind of decided that they were going to use the NWEA as their state testing assessment, we've been using it for a number of years. The main 3-year assessment is a testing product of the NWEA, and that's Maine's accountability assessment for reading and math. And as you've heard me share before, we are required by state law to test students in grades 3 through 8 and second year of high school students. And we are charged with getting 95% of our students to participate in that assessment. So Maine School District's accountability is based on formula. So you've heard me talk before about school improvement, tier 3 status, all of that information. So our schools the state of Maine uses a formula to come up with which schools they're going to provide additional support for. And the formula is a little confusing, but to kind of break it down quickly, they use 3 different measures. They first look at chronic absenteeism rates. So the percentage of your students missing 10% or more of the scheduled school days in a year, regardless of the reason. So excused, unexcused, planned vacation, sick and in the hospital for 10 days, whatever it is, it counts against the chronic absenteeism rate. And so the state has set a goal that only 10% of a school's or district's population would be at that threshold. Right now across the state, the numbers are much higher, the percentages are much higher than that. And you'll see on our slide, ours is as well, but that's just a really tricky measure to get down to 10% when you consider illness, planned vacations, all of those number of things. So if it was just based on unexcused absences, it'd be a little bit easier to tackle, but where it's excused and unexcused, it's a little tricky. We are taking some steps though to try to improve those numbers. So if your chronic absenteeism rate is above 10% and your academic achievement for school's academic achievement based on the spring Maine 3-year assessment, just the spring summative questions. Students take the test in the spring, they're given a set of questions that are adaptive based on their level. And then they're given some questions that are mixed in there that are just grade specific. Maine pulls out those grade specific questions and comes up with a scaled score, a 4-digit scaled score of how our students are doing on the Common Core. So they use that information along with the academic growth based on percentage of students who meet projected growth from fall to spring. So keep in mind that the assessment in the fall does not contain those grade specific questions. it's very adaptive, right? So if if the student's answering questions, it'll get harder. If they're answering them incorrectly, it'll get easier. So the fall assessment completely adaptive, no ceiling, no floor, well, in the K-12 span. In the spring, it only is adaptive, 1 grade level up and 1 grade level below. But the state does use fall to spring growth percentages. And they claim that that's statistically okay. Okay, so this is last year's data for our kindergarten students, not a required state testing grade level, but we test them. And so at the end of the year, the average score across our kindergartners for reading was the 56th percentile, solidly, if not even a little higher than the average. And in math, 63% was the average score, which is in the high average band. Our kindergartners, I kind of give you this information because anything yellow, green, or blue is considered average across the country. So 71% of our kindergartners scored in the yellow, green, or blue together for reading and for math. I'm just gonna keep going. So interrupt me at any point. And then because the state takes a look at it for the other required grades, we did take a look at our growth from fall to spring, which for kindergarten, the test doesn't change, right? So it is the same test. Based on NWEA normative studies, roughly, we should have 50% roughly of our students who meet or exceed their projected growth targets in any given test span. So for that kindergarten class, from the time they were tested in the fall and when they were tested in the spring, 52% met their math growth targets and 42% met their reading.
So can I just
Yeah.
ask a question? Because I haven't fully processed what you told me at the beginning. So,
Okay.
so let's say you got a kindergartner who comes in.
Yeah.
And they take this adaptive test.
Mhm.
And it says that they're at the 2nd grade level.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming then would make some sort of projection of what their writ growth would be, like
Mhm.
halfway through the 2nd grade year, or maybe 3rd grade year.
Mhm.
And then they take a test that only allows them to get up to the 1st grade year.
Not kindergarten, because kindergarten is not a
Well,
requirement.
I mean, of any grade. I'm just saying kindergarten, because you happen to have that slide
Yep.
here. But it could be 3rd grade and maybe they're at 5th grade level math.
Yes,
Does that just guarantee that our top students will never pass this writ growth by the model that they have? Not that it ever was really particularly easy when you
Right.
have a student who was already at the 99th percentile.
only.
Their
some-
writ growth was going to be 0,
Exactly. Yeah.
but, is that why you'll never be able to really encompass everyone?
So that's a good point, right? There's just only so far you can go, and if they're not allowing that child that in the fall is performing 5th grader, performing on a 7th grade level, when they take it in the spring, even the portion that is adaptive doesn't adapt high enough.
Yeah,
So you're right.
okay.
Yeah.
All
There's laws.
Mhm.
Because it's not gonna expect them to learn algebra.
right. But if you're already being able to do multiplication,
Mhm.
and then the highest level that they give you is subtraction,
Mhm.
you can't prove that you've got growth.
Right. Right, so do you see what, for me, I get a little frustrated. You see why it's really hard for me to take that fall to spring can be part of Maine's accountability system?
Well, that's what I'm trying to process.
Yeah.
Have we provided her with a dartboard yet?
Someone didn't seem to follow how this is working.
Right,
Okay,
so what I like to do is look at our spring to spring,
there we go.
right? Because that's the same test, right? Same style of test. But that's not what Maine is using. Yes. On I go. Okay, so this is the Miles Lane reading data. So remember that 1st and 2nd grade are not state required grades, but we give the test, the normal NWE test. So 43% was the average writ score in the spring for 1st graders. 49% was the average for 2nd, 45 for 3rd, and 43 for 4th. And then if you're looking at yellow, green, and blue bands, over here on the right you'll see the percentages that scored in at the bottom of the average range, all the way up to the highest that they can get under the range. We keep going, because I have a lot of data. Then this is the math data. So something that jumped out at us at curriculum the other night was that grade 2 class, right? So 60% was the average score in that grade 2 class, which 61% would have put them in the green for their average, which is really high. And then if you look over here, 69% of that cohort of kids who are currently third graders scored in the average or higher. And that's a big population in the blue, 18%. So here's what the state uses, fall to spring growth for our students. And the next slide is going to be spring to spring. I couldn't give that to you for kindergarten because we only had them that year. But on the next slide will be spring to spring. So you'll be looking at, for first grade, it'll be when they were kindergartners and when they were first graders. So the numbers will change. So I just want to look at like this grade 1 to grade 2, like 63% of them met their targets. But if I go back here, only 40%, same cohort of kids using 2 different testing windows. This is fall to spring, and this is spring to spring.
And under the presumption that we just talked about, that may be some of our higher performing students.
Yes.
That's making it that difference.
The Bucksport Middle School reading data from last spring. So the average RIT scores are over here, 48th percentile, 44th for the 6th graders, and then 7th and 8th grade, 35%, 39% for reading. And then over there you have yellow, green, and blue combined, 56% for 5th grade, 59% for 6th, and then 43% and 47%. The math. So a couple things that jumped out at us, and we'll look at this when we do our takeaways, but like looking at that grade 6 population and that 35% of that grade 6 falling in that red band was something that that kind of stood out to us when we were looking at middle school data and where we should be putting our, what basket should we be putting our eggs in to help support the kiddos. That's a big chunk. 7th grade had, this particular 7th grade class didn't have any kids that scored in the blue. Again, it goes back to what you were talking about, Tom. And so here's the fall to spring growth projections. Again, that 6th grade class stood out to us with 16% meeting or exceeding their projected RIT growth from fall to spring. Because that is what the state is using for data. So we've looked closely at that. Beth and I have spent quite a bit of time on this. In grade 8 too, over here on the 20%, those are our current freshmen. I will say that we're still in the testing window for fall right now, but I've glanced at some of this information and our fall scores look pretty good. But again, there's that, you can go as high or as low as you need to, right, to adjust. So it's just a different assessment.
I feel like that's so we do 2 different tests.
This is spring to spring.
Yeah.
So that same sixth grade class that only had 16% meeting their growth targets. When you look at their grade 5 spring to their grade 6 spring, 49% of them met their growth targets. So for high school, we only test freshmen and sophomores for our purposes. Sophomores are the required testing level, but we also test our freshmen. And so last spring, this is their reading data, 47% was the average for freshmen and 51% for grade 10. But you'll see over here that average or higher band, 59% for freshmen and 70% for sophomores. And then this is the math. Again, seeing that there are no sophomores in the blue on this, yet we have juniors right now taking AP honors. They're doing fine. So
Very strong.
take it
The lower end also is very.
Very, very.
very small.
Yeah, if it only lets you fall one. There's a ceiling and a net.
So here their growth, fall to spring is at the top and then spring to spring is at the bottom. Not as much variance there for the olders, but. So I'm gonna jump into the state, 4-digit scale scores. So this is just on the summative portion for the required grade level. So 3rd through 8th and sophomores in math and reading. This data will be going public, at this dashboard site right here, the clickable link. This year, last year's data is not on there yet. The state has the 22-23 data right now on their dashboard. They're telling us that it should be up and live by the end of October. So you can go, when it's updated by the state, you can go to this website and check surrounding districts, get information about their chronic absenteeism rate, get information about their state testing data. You can get information about how many teachers they have, all kinds of information. It gives you a snapshot of the entire district. But right now, if you go there, it's 22-23 data, so.
This is specifically Common Core with the questions that they take out.
Yeah. Yep. So Maine's accountability is based on the Common Core, even though Maine rewrote their standards to the Maine learning results, which are largely based on the Common Core, but not word for word. But the federal government asks the state to use Common Core for their accountability. Okay. So first of all, I'll give you our assessment participation rates because that matters, right? So we don't want to get below 75% for sure. But if we're at 90%, then I have to just write an explanation of why 90%. If we get below 75%, then the state says that there can be funding ramifications in your title lines. But we work really hard to stay 90% roughly. We'd like to be 95. Last year we were. It's just an average of our district, so we were at 95%. And then the state uses that chronic absenteeism data, and that will be published on that dashboard. So for 23-24, the chronic absenteeism percentages by school are listed on the right, with our district-wide combining all those for an average of 27.25% of our students missed 10% or more days. And then I gave you the ADA, the average daily attendance. So on any given day, how many students out of 1,100 are in attendance in our schools? It's roughly 91.4% of them are in attendance. And I gave you comparisons for 22-23 at the bottom. So we have lowered our chronic absenteeism rate as a district by 3 percentage points, which is good. It was 30.24. Something that stood out to us, and I know that Aaron put that in his takeaway, that slide, is the VHF rate of 36.76 is something that we really want to focus on and kind of get to the bottom of, drill down a little bit to see what's going on there.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
You had said that on the absences. It didn't matter if they were excused or if they were unexcused.
Right.
If someone is on a school activity that's outside, does that count as an absence or does that count? Okay, so the fact that we send people on robotics trips and all of that, we're not generating a higher number for Aaron to have to deal with.
That's a good question.
That is a very good question. No, because anything that's school sponsored, if they're in attendance on that, then they're in attendance for that.
Okay.
Great question.
It's an account of excused.
Okay, so percentage of students meeting or exceeding those state expectations on just the summative portion. This is so confusing. I understand it is, and I'm trying to explain it the best I can, but on just the summative portion of that assessment in the spring. So those Common Core questions that kids don't get flexibility in, right? Like if you're a third grader, you're getting third grade questions. And we're gonna judge whether you're meeting or exceeding meeting or not meeting state expectation. So we are in the purple, RC 25's numbers. Across the state averages are below them in white. And then you can see for district wide, I just took the average. A couple of things that kind of lowered our district wide for math. You'll see them here in 7th grade at 23% and 25%. Considerably lower than the state, but even those grades for the state, those 3 grades are lower than the others, which is interesting. Sophomore student, actually. And then our reading is down here. I like to celebrate things. So when you look at grade 5 reading, grade 6 reading, and grade 10 reading, we are above state average in those areas. And as a district for our reading, it's 62%.
It almost seems like the test isn't aligned with the learning results for math in 7th and 8th grade, if the state is also performing so poorly.
So poorly.
Or just 6th, 7th, and 8th graders have a lot going on mentally, emotionally, a lot of changing during that time. I don't know. And that's consistent to all kids across the state.
That's true.
That's a tough age.
It really is. And this is one day in time, right?
Right.
So, I mean, that's the same for any child, but
But
Think
a
about
lot of them could be having bad days.
It makes
be
sense
a lot of baggage.
too, because those would have been the kids that would be in 2nd and 3rd grade during the pandemic, which is when you get a lot of that foundational learning.
She's a great book about that you can read.
So some of our takeaways, because the admin team, when we had our admin team meeting a couple weeks ago, or a couple weeks ago, I think, I did the same presentation to them and we talked about what we saw and just, what our takeaways were. So district-wide takeaways, like what I kind of pulled out, and we talked about this as well, is the fact that we updated our K-12 math curriculum last year. You guys board approved, it went through the curriculum committee, you board approved that last spring. And so we are implementing several changes based on what we know the Common Core has in it. Specifically speaking to the order of our units, and I talked to you guys about that last spring when we adopted that curriculum. We're hoping, and we feel like that's going to have a positive impact on our scores if that's one of the reasons why we're seeing these scores the way they are. For example, geometry is something that most math programs that are published put towards the end of the year. And lots of times that's not something that's gotten to before this test happened. So we purposely reordered that. We reordered all the units based on Achieve the Core, which talks about where the majority of your focus should be per grade level. We also aligned it with the mean learning results because that's state law, but we were definitely taking a look at that, Achieve the Common Core, so that we could set our kids up for a more successful testing experience. We continue to focus on our attendance efforts, specifically the chronic absenteeism rates. Attendance is one of our focus points in the Tier 3 application that we're working on for BMS specifically. They have received some money from the state of Maine to work on school improvement. We do have to use it specifically for professional development for our teachers, not used for student materials or supplies. So we're being super creative on how we can use that for professional development around attendance. And sometimes that's just sharing messages with parents as well. And then each of the principals from the different levels took some time to give you their takeaways. It's kind of small, but for elementary, increased focus on differentiation in tier 1 classroom interventions for math and reading. Continuing Title I supports, small groups in literacy and math. After school program, I know Darcy has a plan to really focus in on specifically 2nd and 4th grade this first round based on data. And then of course we have reading recovery. For middle school, the reading scores are close to the state average, so we are pretty proud of our reading scores. They do meet or exceed the 50% recommendation. The math scores are the focus for this year, especially that current 7th grade. So that was that 6th grade class that you saw the data for. And then Beth put something in here on slides 9 and 10, the blue band identifying high gets smaller with each year. The higher students need more challenge to continue to grow. We know that. So we are making sure that we're purposely planning for that. We did the algebra class this year, which we're seeing good results with. We're also at our 7th grade level. I know Jared Copeland does a really nice job of differentiating instruction based on data all the time. Tier 3 status, providing an opportunity for our teachers to engage in math PD. And then also our Tier 3 status helps us provide an opportunity to educate our staff in ways to lower our learning gaps. And then Aaron put some notes in here for high school, greater focus on attendance monitoring. I don't know a whole lot about the orange passes, but he has talked to you about that. With implementation of orange passes and increased parent communications via Reach My Teach, that's what the RMT stands for. And then increased discussions around NUIA data and curriculum and department PLCs with a focus on best educational practices. Aaron, I don't know if you want to, is the goal setting similar to what you were talking about last year with CMS?
Yeah, that's what we start looking at,
Yeah. Goal setting with students. That's what I have for you. Any questions? Anything you want me to?
What's an orange pants?
Orange passes will be used to track students in target class or whatnot, with the increase visibility, I guess, shall we say, on how they're getting the class and when they're getting it on time, just having conversations.
So it's like a
Electronic health.
Yeah,
It's
it's a-
electronic health.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if a student's late, for example.
I didn't know it was
class.
bad.
They're
They're always late.
Oh, I think you went over this last time, but
Yeah.
half the board wasn't here.
Yeah, I was.
I'm just putting that out there.
All right.
You know
Well,
what,
we
I
do-
have pneumonia.
You know what? If you have any questions or you'd like to dig into it more, I really do love data. And I'd be happy to sit down with you individually and go into it in more detail if you'd like.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Next, we've got an executive session, but after that, we've got adjournment, so, would it be all right if I skip to calendar and announcements, just so? Just to hear them before we.
That's wonderful.
All right, so calendar and announcements, we've got curriculum committee, November 14th, 6:30 central office. Policy committee, November 12th, 5:30 central office. Finance committee, November 19th, 5:30 at this library. School board meeting, November 19th, 6 o'clock, right here at the library. Facilities committee, November 14th, 4:30 central office. Aspire committee, November 14th, 5:30 at central office. We will move into an executive session pursuant to MRSA Title I, Section 405, 6D, for the purpose of discussing contract negotiations.
So moved.
Brad, get a
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Say good.
And it's
Zoom or-
virtual.
It's virtual.
It's a
either
virtual,
Zoom
Yeah,
or-
clients.
or
Oh, yeah.
Google.
You'd be
Yeah.
a delegate.
I'll be there.
This Saturday.
All right.
Yeah,
All right.
email him the specs.
All right, we're back.
Yay.
You're a good man. Make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I just did.
Good, second.
We have a motion from Scott, a second from Alicia, and that was unanimous. Thank you all.
Oh, couldn't have
See you next month.
earlier, we always do on the 13th.
I will be